So do you think the current trends with working from home are here to stay?
I think a lot of them are. I think, at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of people talked about how we were going to be in a situation where companies weren't going to want to really have workers or employees working from home for too long. And now that, we've gone down this path and people have seen, wow, well, we can function, working on Zoom, these things. I don't think that, I think I always knew that that was coming, that shift was coming, that listen, like the jobs that are existing today are not going to be existing forever. And a lot of people thought, I think that that would happen a lot slower and COVID accelerated it. But I still also think that there's something very impactful about working together, being in the same room. There's something about walking into an office and seeing your coworker's face and saying, look, how are you doing? Having that small talk that we don't get on Zoom, because we're talking on Zoom, it's very impersonal, so to speak. Right. So sorry, but basically like, there's going to be some changing shifts. I think, companies are going to realize that we can outsource a lot more stuff. If some of our senior people can work more hours from home, or some of our staff can be minimized to work from home, then all that means is technically we need less office space. So then, maybe some of the costs for businesses go down there. And I think obviously if people decide that they want to work from home and they decide they also want to live in different states,
Mhm.
I think that can have a massive effect that we probably haven't fully seen the full ramifications of.
Yeah, and that's a big one. The company that I'm working with now is based out of New York.
Right. So, how many, and this is why I'm saying this is a twofold thing where, like, on one end, businesses are going to say, how little people do we need? But then also, what's the reach of the people that we can get? Because now maybe the people that we thought we only could get in San Francisco or LA, now maybe we can source people from pretty much everywhere.
All over the
And then
country,
the
the
other
world.
side is
Yeah.
that, yeah, employees are going to say, well, hey, I thought the only companies that were available to me were the ones in my city. Now I can look and go, well, wait a minute, like maybe I could work for a company that I've never heard of anywhere.
Right.
And, they might have some kind of remote position that I can do.
And that's
So that,
so true. That probably
yeah,
opens up a lot of opportunity for all millions of people that are employed, that are unemployed.
yes. And,
I never
and,
thought
and
about
what's, and what's funny is that, I don't think we've really seen the true ramifications of that. I don't think that we've gotten there, because I think when COVID first started, everyone was just like, whoa, let's just try to figure out what's happening. And then it was just, the initial human like reaction. So like being reactive to the situation and saying, okay, how do we best solve this? But I think with a little bit more time, I mean, yeah, people are going to start to realize like, I don't have to, and businesses are going to be like, I don't have to, B, and then the confluence of that is going to create, I think, a completely different dynamic.
that. That's interesting. I Yeah, I mean, I never thought about that. That opens up the opportunity to apply to jobs, you know, everywhere. And you're right, it goes
Yeah.
both ways, whereas the business benefits as well with a larger candidate pool.
Yeah. And it's just a different shift in thinking. Like, we've never looked at job boards before and thought, well, why couldn't I look at that company that I used to know 10 years ago that my friend talked about that's in Florida, right? And then because like you look on their board, maybe it says, hey, remote position. It's like, great. Like
Yep,
that wasn't even a thought for any of us really before,
for sure.
so that's a massive shift.
There's some early morning calls, but aside from that, I mean, it works great.
Yeah.
I had to get used to doing the math as far as scheduling meetings and stuff like that with the
Yeah.
different time zones, but so far
Yeah,
so
but I
good.
guess if you think about the idea that a lot of people might say, well, hey, that's just replacing my commute, or,
Mhm.
because in some places, I mean, look, if you're going to spend an hour commuting each way, getting up a few hours earlier to not have to then, spend 2 hours getting ready in the morning and getting your morning routine started and then an hour on the road, I bet a lot of people would take that exchange right now.
Oh yeah, and then you're saving on gas, you're saving on tolls, depending on where you live. Wear and tear
Yeah,
on your car.
it's
Lunch,
massive.
eating out every single day. I mean, there's a big cost savings that goes along with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of people factor that in. So we'll see, and I think it's interesting to see how much of this will change. So how does this affect not just people's idea about employment and businesses' ideas about that as well, but the dynamics of commercial real estate and office space, the dynamics of how the housing markets shift. There's a lot of things that will kind of have a trickle effect off of this that I think, it's very hard to see, and it's very hard to know exactly how it'll play out. But I think the good thing is that we all realize that there's a lot more options than we thought.
Right. Okay. So next question would be, with the way people are transitioning working from home due to COVID, do you think that'll affect productivity? Like you personally, what are your thoughts on it? I know a lot of business owners, want to steer away from that because if they're paying, a couple grand for an employee every year, they want to make sure that they're there in front of them working.
Yeah. Again, I think it's such a loaded question because I think productivity is such it's a data driven word, right? Like where you go, well, how do you measure it first and foremost, right?
Right.
And then like if the employee that you used to have at the office that you knew slacked off goes home, do you anticipate them working less? And most people will go, yeah, they're probably gonna work less. But you could make the case that that person without all of the reasons to slack off
Or
might feel more
distractions.
pressure that when they're at home, they go, uh-oh, like I should do something. And like, remember, time changes when you're at home. So when you haven't done something in the office for an hour or two, but hey, I went up and got to the coffee machine and talked to, John and Steve. And then, I went to my boss's office and then just got a quick little update, like, and 2 hours passed. Like, but no, I've been doing something. Whereas when you're sitting at home and 2 hours passes and you feel like you haven't done anything, you're going to feel very different about how like the pressure that builds up, so again, I think those are the unseen things that it's hard to know, but I think that, with systems and data driven, software platforms that are getting so good at anticipating how people will work and what they'll do, I think the biggest shift in productivity, in my opinion, will come more from like AI and robotics than it will from people working from home or not, because like that shift was already coming. And when a company decides, hey, I can have at scale a quantum computer with AI technology built in that's, going through every aspect of my business. I mean, you could have every employee working at full scale and they couldn't keep up. So
Right.
productivity, even the definition of what's productive will probably change. But I think initially to really answer your question, I think there's definitely a fear that people will do less, but I'm not sure that the data would really show that. It's really hard to know because I think when you factor in commutes and you factor in, that pressure you feel if like you're not doing something, or that when you have a Zoom call at this time that you have to have some answer for some. I mean, I think that part of that those are really hard to know, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the fear is it's probably overstated in some cases, and maybe and for some companies, and depending on your business, the data might show that people are more productive.
No, I agree. I mean, I think you're sitting in an office or wherever you're working for 8 hours a day. How much of that time are you really being productive? I would argue half, which sounds
Yeah,
crazy, but
yeah, no, well, no, I want to say that they've even done studies on that like, in an 8 hour workday, people work, I want to say it's even less than half. I want to say it's something like 2.5 or 3 hours of like actual work. And
yeah,
it could be less. I mean, because when you think about the actual time you're spending putting a spreadsheet together, writing emails, and then, okay, well, you get up, you go to the bathroom, your coffee machine, water
yeah,
cooler. I mean, but at least in the studies I've seen, it's definitely half or less.
that's
So,
crazy.
will that change dramatically by someone being home? It's hard to say,
Right.
but it's
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, as long as the job's getting done, right? That's my motto.
I think that's what people care about. But that's why, again, I think the bigger shift will come from robotics, AI, quantum computing. Like those things are going to make monumental shifts that, the ancillary cost of a person doing an extra task is going to be so small.
This has been The Invested Life with Adam Khalil. Subscribe, like, comment, but most importantly, share the information you learned and share the video with a friend or someone who you think might find value from it.